Music Podcast.
Merry Christmas. Oh, sorry, no, right. What time of year?
What time of year?
Yeah. It's night still.
What?
Sort of.
Hey? Well, it's daylight.
Yeah, it's
Across the bounds.
It's 8:15 in the evening.
We're across the bounds of space and time.
And it's still actually
Yeah.
light. The sun is still up. Amazing.
Nice. Lovely
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers. It's properly spring.
It is. Podcast 4 as well.
Yeah. It's for those of you listening in the future, it's practically Coronation Day.
This is true. We're only
Charles III, not William V.
Harry the what?
Harry the what? What did they call him in The Simpsons?
Oh, I don't know.
It's Harry the something.
Yeah.
wasn't flattering.
No, it wasn't flattering. So we're back actually quite quickly for us. Actually, it's kind of worked very well because we've. It's almost like going back to the olden days when we realised that actually, if you give yourself not that much time to do it, it kind of forces you to actually do it rather than kind of going a bit like homework when you go, it's all right, I've got 6 weeks till this podcast, so therefore I'll leave it to the last week and a half before I start listening to anything. Didn't do that.
Yeah, no, it's good. Actually, that's good. Yeah, we were just like, let's just bang this one out.
Yeah.
And then I spent the rest of the week just listening to music, which is fine. I got into the groove this time.
So we are doing Metallica 72 seasons, or 77 minutes as I call it. Redhook, Postcards from a Loving Hell. No, Postcard, sorry. Not Postcards. Singular. From a Loving Hell.
Mm-hmm.
Living Hell even, God.
Loving Hell.
Loving Hell.
Mm-hmm.
Living Hell. Esther Rose, Safe to Run. Everything But the Girl, Fused. The National, the first 2 pages of Frankenstein. And Susanne Sundfor, Blomi. And there's lots of really good pronunciation mistakes by me when we actually get round to that album, because I haven't figured out how to say any of that shit. Yeah. Anyway, we'll start with the 11th studio album from Metallica. We last did Metallica on podcast 11 2016, which was Hardwire for Self-Destruct. We seem to have missed Death Magnetic. Which I thought we had reviewed, but
I thought we did.
But no. I couldn't see any record of the fact we did. So
no, I thought we did, but all right.
Anywho, 72 seasons.
Yeah,
they're back after
72 seasons.
Yeah,
boom.
Yeah. Are Metallica still the top of rock, Peter?
This album, you go into this album, you think it's Metallica, it's rock metal royalty. How's it gonna be? With some nervousness. And you know what? We were talking about this earlier. They did that blisteringly wonderful revisit to the infamous so-called Metallica, the so-called Black Album, with the box set recently, which was about 5 hours long.
With other people doing the covers.
With other people doing all the covers, of course, not them. Which was good. I hasten to add. So this album. You think, okay, maybe that's influenced the album. Maybe there'll be a bit of the Black Album infused. Anyway, here we are, 72 seasons. The album, it has a tremendous opening. And you know what? My overall thoughts on this, and we'll get into this in a moment, I'm sure. It doesn't outstay its welcome. I know the tracks are long, and for those of you that are looking for a quick fix, this is a long album, and many of the tracks are quite long as well. But actually, weirdly, I don't feel, you might disagree, I don't feel it outstays its long welcome at all. Where I do feel it falls down, I'm going to come to the positive in a moment, I'll just get this one out of the way. Where I do feel it falls down is actually the second half of the album, for me, was more enjoyable. Okay. I think the first album, it thunders along at a real good pace. But actually, on the first couple of listens, you're kind of hard to distinguish between the tracks. It's a continuous. Yep,
fair enough.
You know, but this changes, I suppose, with "Sleepwalk My Life Away," which has a great chorus that you can imagine shouting at the game, "Wake me!" etc. Which is also followed by the equally shoutable, "You must burn!" And then you get to the halfway point, which is Lux Eternia.
Yes. Yes, the 3.5 minute pop song.
Yeah, the 3.5 minute pop song.
Although it's not a pop song.
But it is light relief, it really is. So whilst it offers a return to the speed metal, I think it's the first song I thought that actually had the guitars come into the fore. I know this sounds mad, right? Because we're talking about Metallica.
Yeah.
But it was the first time I thought the guitars actually took centre stage. I mean, almost halfway through the album, it's been all drumming so far.
There's always been a lot of
the literal drumming, but also the guitar drumming. But you know, and so you get this amazing guitar riffs, and that's brilliant, and that works really well. And I mean, then we'd go back into sort of rock metal. And you get the slower paced Crown of Barbed Wire, which I think sets the tone for side 2. It's makes a bit slower, a bit more well thought out, a bit more well paced, not as repetitive beats as in side 1.
Yeah.
And also seemingly louder, because I think actually the guitars then do sort of come to the fore. I think it rocks harder in a weird way. So my thoughts are, overall, this fast-paced album makes up for in speed what perhaps it loses in length. The predominant sound throughout is probably the drumming. The guitars do get in there and make the most of the time that they have. And sometimes even the vocals are worth a mention as well.
Actually, some quite interesting lyrics, actually.
Yeah, very interesting lyrics. I think vocally very interesting.
Quite dark.
Very dark, of course. I thought it's an enjoyable album, though. It rocks along at a pace, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with most of that, I think. I think it's a more uneven album than the previous 2 albums they've released. But again, I think when it's good, it is very, very, very good. But I think you're also right in saying that occasionally there are moments where it's a bit Metallica by numbers and particularly a bit one note.
Yeah.
In fact, it's like, as I say, all the songs sound, there's a few bits where they don't all sound the same, because they don't all sound the same. Ironically, there's another album that I actually quite like in the podcast as well that you could also say is a bit one note, but thing. And who would have thought that actually on that subject that I'd be missing a Metallica ballad, because that's kind of what's missing. That's kind of what's missing. Almost missing from the album.
Yeah.
But repeat listings do pay off.
Yes.
As you say, it kicks off with a crowd-pleasing slice of classic thrashing Metallica. And then I actually really like the riff on Shadow Follows, which is the next song. But as you say, you've got the you've got Lars Ulrich's unique drumming style.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then I for me, and you said for the second half there, I probably lean towards probably the first half to a certain extent. Because I think I think there's a run of 3 songs from Screaming Suicide, which I really like, through to Lux Eterna, which is it's almost like Motorhead, really. That kind of thing. You get 3.5 minutes of Motorhead, and by far the shortest thing on the album. Although there was a 4.5 minute song later on, Too Far Gone, later on in the record.
Which I put on my also liked list.
And even actually, bizarrely, to go to what you were saying, that it doesn't outstay its welcome despite the length. The longest track on the album is the final song, which is 11 minutes. And I actually felt shorter than actually a couple of the other songs on the album.
Is it really 11 minutes?
Yeah.
Wow. Because that feels far shorter than some of the other stuff.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And some really, really lovely guitar playing on that particular track as well. Basically, it's a Metallica, big drums, big riffs.
Yep. Some vocals.
Yeah. and a reminder that, when it comes to this kind of metal, they are
still got it.
Still up there,
still got it. Yeah. Has swagger.
Yeah, has swagger.
Definitely has swagger.
That's a good way of looking at it. So we're going to stay with metal of sorts, and we're going to go for a new band from Australia called Redhook, and their debut album Postcard from a Living Hell. Got the title right this time. And this immediately sounded like a modern rock record to me when I first put it on. It's like it's chock full of those kind of pop and dance influences, and the band themselves describe themselves as screaming rap, rock, electro, pop mutants, which I thought was quite nice. Quite a nice description.
Wonderful,
actually. Yeah,
wonderful stuff.
And when I first listened to it the first time, it reminded me kind of Paramore and Bring Me the Horizon, both of whom we've reviewed in this podcast before. I even with a bit of Linkin Park thrown in maybe as well. And on first listen, I kind of thought, this is pretty solid, actually. And then it was on third listen, and this is one of 2 albums, and I mentioned this in a private conversation with you, when I've been home a lot last couple of weeks, so I've been listening to most stuff just through speakers, and haven't been listening to anything through headphones, but I actually listened to this for the 3rd time, and one other album for the 3rd time on headphones, and actually having the headphone experience on this album, particularly the start of the album, was because actually quite a lot going on musically in the thing. It suddenly kind of opened up the record for me, and I went from thinking this is solid to thinking that this is actually probably one of the best albums of this type, this modern metal type, certainly that we've covered, and certainly that I've heard in a while. It's just really, I love the pop sensibilities of it. I love the kind of the dance influences, the random growl screaming that's in there, some good foot tapping melodies, and just the whole energy of the thing. Because again, it's quite lots of quite short songs. Yeah. So again, it's kind of like 3.5 minute songs. And also, how can you not like a band that names a song after Lewis Carroll's poem Jabberwocky?
Absolutely.
I think the first half of the album is probably stronger than the second half of the album, if anything. Yeah, so title track, really, really good. Really like Off Your Head and Critic.
I liked, yeah.
But I think the whole thing actually honks together pretty well and ends with a song called Say, which is quite nice. We've also got 3 tracks on the album that are recorded with fellow Australian bands. So I think Imposter, Soju and Inarticulate are all done with other upcoming
I didn't realise that.
Australian bands of the same kind of punk rock, modern punk rock, obviously, metal kind of genre, and I think, I was pleasantly surprised by this album. I thought, good on them.
I wrote Jabberwocky as one of the first tracks I liked off this album. I also wrote, and you said it, I also wrote the phrase in my notes here, teen pop sensibilities.
There we go.
It's like, it's pop thrash metal and all of a sudden it's West Coast Disney, It's like, it's there. Yeah. It's fun, it's loud, it's teen pop sensibilities, it's thrash metal, it's a mix of one style to the next, but it's balanced. I think the difference is it's balanced throughout. And we've had albums like this in the past where it's just like it's the sort of the 90 degree, the 180, 360 degree.
Whichever one. Whichever degree you want.
I was doing my maths homework last night. Whichever one of those, and it's something very like left turn, right turn, very sudden, and you're like, oh god, that's too much. But this is actually really well balanced, and throughout the tracks, it's such as Inarticulate, it definitely leans more into the pop than the rock.
Certainly, yes.
Soju, I really like the one with the song audience FU chorus.
Yep.
Which clearly works well at gigs like that. Intervention Light, Critic you mentioned. Yeah, it's a great album, and you're absolutely right. And I don't know what the other album was that you listened to on your headphones. I listened to see, I'm like the flip of what you are.
I would normally be that way.
Yeah, no, I've really gone to headphones now over other stuff. So I appreciate what you're saying there, and I'm quite interested to hear what the next album is that you mentioned that's the same, because it does change your view when you can hear it all sort of around you.
Yeah,
and this works really well, production-wise.
Good for them.
Good for them.
We move on to some country, and we haven't done country for a while, actually.
I know.
Unbelievably, we used to have quite a good run of country.
I know.
Although saying that until the last couple of weeks, we haven't really done kind of metal or stuff either. We did Babe Metal last time, and we've actually done.
Yeah.
So this is a 4th album from a lady called Esther Rose. And also quite a short album, this one. So quite. Yeah. Anyway, Safe to Run, Pete.
It's a slow. Well, it begins as a slow, nicely paced country but folky album with a distinct indie vibe from track to track as well. I think the opener, Stay, is very well paced, bouncy tune.
Yeah. Followed
by the excellent Chet Baker. And
one of my favourite lyrics in that song.
Yes. And then it settles into a kind of nice, I said leans more towards the folk than country, because there's a nice sort of Dylan-esque vibe going on, particularly on the track Spider. But then at times the folk goes deeper. There's St. Francis Waltz with its string arrangement, not to mention the music lyrics. I like the lyrics of that. but then it changes with, there's the odd snippet of radio here, the odd snippet of a conversation here. I think New Magic 2, which is in the middle of the album, leans definitely more towards the sort of new country vibe. And then we get into the electronica that sort of comes in the second half of the album.
Yeah, it definitely goes off in a more alt poppy.
Yeah.
Not totally poppy, but it goes off it certainly goes more in that direction in the second half of the album.
It's all it feels like a natural progression. So, as I say, back to the start. Start's very sort of country. Very sort of bouncy, traditional sort of.
Yeah, big dong bro coming in the first track. Yeah.
And then you get to the midway point, and when the electronica kicks in, the drums and synths and what have you, it feels quite natural. It feels like that lyrically you were leading there anyway, or musically, and it feels really good. And I've written a few more notes about the final few tracks, but I think I won't go into the detail. But what this leaves me with, this album, is something of kind of a bittersweet taste towards the end. And it feels, again, lyrically, it starts quite positively. Yeah. And then by the end, it's quite bittersweet.
Yeah.
And the last track in particular, I couldn't decide whether that was a railing against God or a railing against the pervader of profits and capitalism.
Okay, yeah.
Because there's a reference in there to... I don't know. I haven't done the research, but ignoring the warnings from Greta, I'm presuming that's and then ignoring the warnings from Jesus as well, and ending up in a situation where we all end up in heaven on the wrong side, and it's just like go to hell in a handcart.
Yeah.
But in between all of that, there'd been some lovey-dovey stuff at the beginning. And something about a relationship turning sour towards the end.
Yeah, it's a typical country then, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you hit it on right the head. It starts off as a fairly traditional kind of country record, and then halfway through kind of goes slightly more adventurous and more kind of poppy. And there are really nice bits in both. As you say, the opening track's really lovely. Stay is a really lovely track. Chet Baker, which is the second track, I quite like that as well. That's one of the songs about looking back on younger you and basically what a tit you were. Kind of thing. I love the line where it goes, 23, save me, which I thought was just like, which I thought was quite funny. And he mentioned Spider, which for me, when I was listening to that, I was kind of thinking, this belongs on a David Lynch film soundtrack.
Yeah.
It just has that
feel.
That kind of thing. I'm thinking, this is where this song belongs. For me, my two favourite tracks on the album, though, are probably title track, which I think is absolutely banging, and Dream Girl, which is which is another one of those songs, that classic kind of country trope of small town girl going off to Hollywood, blah blah blah. But obviously, traditionally, these songs were always sang from the male point of view, and eventually, the lady had to come back home with her tail between her legs because everything had gone wrong. So it's different. So it's got a different take on that. But I think it's not heard of Esther before, but actually, a really pleasant record.
Very, very pleasant. Really enjoyed that one.
So we move on now to the return of Everything But the Girl with their 11th studio album Fuse, first for 24 years. I know.
That long, huh?
God, I know.
Crikey.
So this is where I have to start my huge disclaimer saying never really much of a fan.
Don't we need it?
My view was always like fine, but didn't really need to exhaust percentage on them.
Yeah. No.
Of course, Misty was a great tune, don't get me wrong. Yeah, still, absolutely. But anyway, we're back in back in 2023.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking there's not a lot here that's changing my mind particularly.
Nope.
And I'm just clear, I'm not saying this is a rubbish record.
Nope.
Because it's not. It's perfectly fine.
Yep.
Plus, on the pluses, it's impressive that it's so cohesive and embraces the sounds and trickery of modern era without losing what was unique to them as a band.
Yeah.
24 years and beyond ago. Production's great. Thorne's vocal is right up in the middle of the mix. Couple couple of songs that I really like. Opening track particularly, which echoes Missing and a few other of their songs, but with much more kind of WAV forms going woo, 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 on the thing. Time and time again, I think later on this album also really liked. But if I'm being honest, I still find them kind of dull. So for me, and this was a perfect example of, I've played several of these albums during tea time, dinner time in the Vine household, and this one worked perfectly fine. But I think it worked perfectly fine because it's quite inoffensive background music. And that's where I am with this release. So in a way, my view of them as a band hasn't changed in 30 years. I always thought they were perfectly fine, but wasn't really something that really rocked my boat particularly. And this album is equally perfectly fine and doesn't really rock my boat.
You know what? Missing is funny because if it came on now, I'd still be tapping my foot.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely banging tune.
Banging tune. And do you know what? There are shades of that with the opener, Nothing Left to Lose.
Yeah, very much so.
But I think side one alternates between the sort of the bangers and the more thoughtful pieces, like Run a Red Light and When You Mess Up. I'll say disclaimer now. Well, two disclaimers. One, I found side one more interesting because it goes from that sort of alternate, where side two settles down, but never quite, to me, gets going in the same way.
Yeah, there's more variety on side one.
More variety on side one. And I'm probably, in the next 30 seconds, I'm probably going to mention two bands that I do really like, one of which I really do like. And yet, Everything But the Girl I've never really sort of clicked with. And here we go. Caution to the Wind sounds vocally like it's going after the Hot Chip sound at some point.
Oh yeah,
yeah. There's a bit of Hot Chip in there.
No, I'd agree.
And that's great. I really like that.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And the same could be said for Time and Time Again, which Neil Tennant's in there somewhere. He's kind of in the mix. I was honestly...
Okay, I take back saying that was one of the good songs.
No. definitely sort of a more modern Pet Shop Boys sound in that. So you think, oh, you know, this I get it completely. This is where it's going. It's appealing to the same audience, and yet, no, it doesn't quite settle for me. And it's completely fine. And if you love the band and you're so glad that they're back, then I'm really happy for you because this is a good album.
Yeah,
from that point of view,
absolutely.
Yeah, but as with their '90s heyday, I'm not on board. Not entirely on board yet.
See, damn, that's one which I was expecting us to disagree on. Like I was thinking, I'm going to say no, didn't really get them then. Didn't really get them then. No, didn't really get them there. And you're going to go, oh, I really love this record.
Yeah, no, I didn't really get them then, and I don't really get them now. So it just goes to show that you can throw all the elements you think that Pete likes at a record, and I come away thinking, meh.
I don't think we're going to affect the sales. It's fine. Or streams, indeed.
Indeed.
In fact, we've given them some streams, so we've earned them .000000000.
And one thing, and I'm going to say this about another album as well. We kind of come to. I listened to this album a lot, and I just kept listening to it and listening to it and listening to it. And I thought, this is going to click at some point, and it did, but it never quite did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Moving on then, we've got two albums left, and amusingly, I'm going to put this further. So, we've got The National, which we're going to review next, and then Susanne Sundfor after that. We actually last reviewed these artists on the same podcast.
No way!
Podcast 8, 2017.
Wow. Remember it well.
So, Susanne Sundfor album was Music for People in Trouble, which was her last album,
yes.
and The National was their album before the last album, Sleep Well Beast. But yes, but amusingly, when I looked through it thinking, what are the chances? We actually last reviewed them on exactly the same podcast.
Yeah.
However, The National are back. They've had an album that we didn't review in between. This is their 9th album. First 2 pages of Frankenstein. The album is called. I know from our conversations we both did back-to-back listens of this record.
Yeah.
Did that pay off, Pete, in this case?
And then this is the other album that I just referred to, that I listened to again and again and again and again and again and again. And I'll leave that hanging for a moment. I'll come back to it. It has a very mellow, atmospheric beginning. and then things do pick up a pace. But for me, the album really hits its stride when Phoebe Bridgers of Podcast 3,
yes,
2023.
Yes. Last time, yes.
Last time round.
As part of Boy Genius, yes.
Sorry. And I think things really sort of hit their stride at that point.
Yeah, she's on 2 of the tracks, in fact.
And actually the other track she does as well, Your Mind Is Not Your Own, is also good.
Yes. Should say that This Isn't Helping is the first track she's on. Yes.
Oh, sorry, yeah. And This Isn't Helping, which is this track that I'm talking about, the first track that she's on, followed by Tropic Morning News. I think that's a really that's a good sort of, it sort of feels like it comes together at that point. It's funny because before those 2 tracks, there is a track called New Order T-shirt, and I actually think Tropic Morning News sounds like New Order.
It does a bit, actually, yeah.
You know, whereas New Order T-shirt doesn't.
And it's funny because obviously just saw that thing. Obviously, New Order name band. They also, I think it might be that track before that where they mentioned both the Cowboy Junkies and Afghan Wigs.
Yes, so the Afghan Wigs get mentioned.
They're kind of band name dropping throughout the whole bloody this first part of the album.
Exactly, I don't think it was that track or it's Eucalyptus where they get mentioned.
Yeah, I think it's Eucalyptus. Yes.
Yeah, there's a run of bands that are mentioned, but then you finally get one that sounds like one of the bands. For me, this was all that side 2.
Okay.
There is a run. Alien, The Alcott with our old friend Taylor Swift.
Indeed.
And Grease in Your Hair. And I think there's a run of about 3 or 4 tracks there in side 2. I think it's a great run. It's a really great run. And it actually really lifts the album because, as I say, I struggled to sort of find it.
Yes.
Until those first couple of tracks I mentioned a moment ago. And then we get this great run on side 2, which sort of pulls it together. But where my perhaps opinion of this album falls down is I did listen. This is the album I listened to the most. Everything but the Girl Was Closed, but this album to listen to. And
possibly similar, actually.
Yeah, and on repeated listening as well. And I kept listening to it. I've got to listen to that again. I've got to listen to that again. And actually, I rarely do this. When we're doing these things, I rarely put an album on 3 times on the trot.
Ditto.
And it didn't quite click for me. So all that praise I've lavished on it is well deserved. Side 2 I love, but in overall, not quite. Yeah, not quite feeling.
Well, I know at the start of the podcast with the Metallica album, I said that there was another album that I thought suffered from being a bit one note.
Yeah.
Well,
it's this one.
This one.
Yeah.
But again, like the Metallica album, I think this is a really good record.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the first time, this was the only album actually on first listen I wrote a comment down about.
Yeah.
Which I wrote, washes over you, but in a good way.
Yes. Yeah, fine.
And that was
absolutely fair comment.
But then, as you said, like then there was something about it that actually made me kind of go, I'm going to listen to that again.
Yeah.
Listen to it again, and I actually love the opening track. The opening track, I think, which is Once Upon a Poolside, which has Sufjan Stevens, Dean Beckford. Really, really love that. And I was thinking, say this song its own won't do me.
Yeah.
But yeah, and pace wise, I thought it was actually quite simply. But obviously, Taylor Swift is on this album. Obviously, Aaron Dresner, who is a member of the band, bass player in the band, co-wrote some of the stuff on the last couple of Taylor Swift albums and produced the last couple of Taylor Swift albums. So obviously there's a similarity there. And I thought pace-wise it was very similar to the last 2 Swift albums in the fact that it is that kind of fairly kind of sedate kind of pacing and things just drift into each other, and it's almost more about changing textures musically rather than changing musical styles. But I did like it. I mean, I just say the opening track and Your Mind Is Not Your Friend, which is the second Bridges contribution, probably my 2 favourite tracks on the album.
Yes.
Taylor Swift thing is obviously it's beautiful and beautiful.
It's good. It's not as good as I prefer the Phoebe Bridges stuff.
Yeah. Beautiful song. And it is, I would recommend this to people because it is a really, really lovely record. The fact that I genuinely have listened to, similar to you, I think as of this afternoon I'd listened to it 5 times.
Yeah.
And enjoyed it all 5 times. Yeah. But as you say, there's there is a slight kind of gnawing bit in the back of your brain, kind of thinking, it's kind of missing something though, isn't it? You're thinking there's lots of really good stuff in here, but it's close to being very good, but not quite there.
Yes, and I think that's what frustrated me. Frustrated me about the Everything But the Girl album, but in a different way. But actually, I felt that this was an album that I would respond positively to. I have responded positively to it, but I feel like I should like it more. And who knows? By the end of this year, it might be my favourite album.
Yeah. Well, the fact that we both listen to it a lot and go back to it. If you're listening to it, means there must be something that's dragging you back to it, regardless of what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
So last album, Susan Sundfor. Actually, I'm not sure what album we were at with Susan. I should look that one up.
3?
No. I think
Second.
It's the third one we've reviewed, but I think there's.
She got a couple more before.
I think there's like. I think it's probably the 6th or 7th.
Oh, really?
Altogether,
God, we're into the depth there.
Yeah, so this is called Blomi,
Blomi.
which I think means in bloom, essentially.
Indeed.
And I think people often speak of the likes of Kate Bush and Bjork when they're talking about Sundfor as an artist generally, particularly people that are familiar with her entire oeuvre, as they say. And with good reason, because she certainly is an artist who embraces quirk and inventiveness.
Yes.
I mean, we fell in love with her for her synth poppiness back on 12 Love Stories.
Yeah, 10.
10 Love Stories.
Yeah.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
of course, yeah. Don't get it wrong. And we're equally impressed when she mellowed out for Music with People in Trouble.
Yeah.
This album definitely goes further down that kind of road,
yes.
of being more on the kind of mellow side of things. She's become a mom during the time between that album and this album, and this album certainly reflects that whole family, birth, renewal, nature, big time presence on this album. In fact, so much so we definitely begin with kind of nature and stuff, and the kind of white noise thing with a friend of Sundfor's kind of talking about spirituality, essentially, as the opening thing.
Indeed.
Which is very much a kind of like the kind of thing you'd expect on a Kate Bush or a Bjork album, and the kind of thing that made my family kind of go, "Can we turn this off?" And it is an odd opening. It's not what I particularly want. And then you move, and then it kind of moves from there into the first song proper, which is more a kind of. I wrote down. This is kind of an ethereal, slow show tune. Which also didn't particularly resonate with me particularly, and I was thinking, oh my god, am I going to be in a Susan Sundfor album? And I'm going to go, don't like this. And then the album's title track comes in, track 3, and and I was going, this is magnificent.
Yes.
I love this song. This is just brilliant. And from that point onwards, I'm back in Susanne Sundfor territory. I'm going, I love this record. This is great. Channeling Carole King, Dusty Springfield on things like Fare the Well, Runa and Nat Sunger. Got some gospel stuff coming in on what I call the clapping song, so it says in pronouncing what the actual song title is, which has added bird song and a fiddle outro, which is like, again, we've been there before with Sundfor when suddenly something goes off and becomes a totally different song. Ali Osha is I thought it was very Kate Bush-like, and then it has a swarm of bees at the end, as you do. There's a kind of almost Tom Waits-esque kind of tune, which is Sani Yare Li, which was apparently an erotic Minoan text translated into Old Norse by her father, who features on the cover of the album.
Old Norse?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Clearly you'd recognise the Old Norse.
I wrote German question mark.
Yes, I thought it was German at first as well. So,
right.
But yeah, I mean, I if you ignore the opening spirituality thing and the slightly dodgy, okay first track, I think this is brilliant.
It's funny. I put German question mark because I questioned the sort of the clearly Nordic title. Yes, I've written, my first comment is, take away the first track of spoken word through a Doctor Who filter of sounds.
Yes.
And this mellow album of dark Scandi pop is more like her previous album, Music for People in Trouble. And do you know what? My overall comment, I'll skip to the end of my review and I'll go into it a bit more in a second, is, you know, it's a definite progression from her in terms of that previous album. It follows that train, if you will.
Yes.
I think the album proper begins with the lovely Ashira song, which I actually think I like more than you did. For me, that sort of that on repeated listen that grew on me. But I definitely agree with you. It hits its stride with Blomi and Runa, which follows. Those sort of 2 or 3 tracks there, that really sort of comes together in terms of, you know, how it is. And it never really loses track from that point. And you mentioned some of the tracks there. Alyosha, very reminiscent actually of 10 Love Songs Silencer. That sort of, you know,
I hadn't thought that.
The way that sort of builds, the guitar, the string, etc. I actually think that was quite. It was very. I had to go back and listen to that previous song.
Yeah.
Because I was just like, I like this. I heard it before. I've heard a version of it before, but this is definitely a progression of that. Not German. Spoken words song is also great, and I like Natsonga.
Yeah.
Which is where it bows out, the extra mellow track at the end, or towards the end there. Then you get a bit of a reprise of the experimentation
but without the spirituality.
Without the spirituality. And you mentioned Kate Bush and Bjork, obviously. I'll go as far as to mention Yoko Ono as well, because actually
that's fair enough.
The final words of the album are, with the word of the heart being yes. And of course, that is how John Lennon met Yoko Ono, with the word yes. So I thought I got very Ono vibes from that. So overall, really enjoyed this album a lot. Recognise its appeal might be limited.
Well, particularly anyone that literally starts the album trying to listen to it as an album. Yeah. There's a lot of people that aren't going to get past the first track.
I must confess, and this is something I never do, particularly for albums I like, on repeated listen. I may have skipped the first track once or twice.
Well, yeah, because once you've heard it the once,
I'm done.
You're thinking, okay, I heard that. She has a very nice voice. Yeah. Spirituality.
And that's a terrible confession to make, but I may have done that.
No, I think that's fairly acceptable, really. I'm now getting at the thing. Usually, it's quite funny that I had someone ask me the other day when you going, do you know what your favourite album of the podcast is before coming to the podcast? And sometimes I kind of do.
Yeah.
And then sometimes I kind of don't. And I'm just thinking now, I'm just looking through it going, what is my favourite album? It's like...
I kind of do. Do you know what? This podcast, my appreciation of a couple of the albums was built during our conversation, actually, in the last 20, 30 minutes.
Well, that's always a good thing as well.
Good value.
Yeah.
It's worth turning up.
Yeah.
Speaking of turning up, I found this on my chair. Can I open it now?
Oh, yes. This is the belated birthday present.
Oh, wonderful. I have a feeling it's musically themed because it rattles like a cassette. Oh, it's a packet of Bowie Trump cards.
Yeah.
Oh,
Bowie Top Trumps.
Sweet. Bowie Top Trumps. As I may have bored you with, I've not bored them, the listener, with. I am actually going through a bit of a Bowie project at the moment. I'm listening to all the stuff chronologically and sort of assessing it in my own nerdy way.
Well, I apologise for a few of those albums.
Do you know what? No, do you know what? It was just like, it's your appreciation of Diamond Dogs. I'm with you.
Diamond Dogs. Love Diamond Dogs.
Yeah, I love Diamond Dogs. Thank you very much. That's sweet. Bowie.
Yes.
Anyway.
I saw those in Glasgow and thought, there's an ideal
absolutely
present.
Perfect. Wonderful. I'm going to have much fun with them.
So that's another podcast done. Hopefully we're back in around about a month's time for fun.
Are you going to pick? No. You got to pick it. You got to pick it. You're avoiding picking. I
am. I'm going to have two different answers because of different things. The true long-term answer is going to be Susanne Sundfor, apart from the first two tracks. But I am going to make a special thing of bigging up Redhook, who, like I said, I genuinely think are the first kind of new rock metal band playing that type of music. There's lots of bands that sound very similar that has actually made me kind of go, actually, I quite like listening to this, and I would actually actively choose to listen to this record again rather than going, oh, podcast's done, I don't need to listen to them again.
This is where we radically diverge for once. Yes, it's a good album. I'm not sure I'd rank it in my final ranking. I agree with you on Susanne Sundfor. I think that's going to be up there. But for me, coming straight out of the podcast, is Esther Rose.
There you go. Well done, Esther. If only we knew somebody that had a wife called Esther who keeps wanting us to go and meet up.
Okay.
If you listen to the podcast, Selby, if you're not, you're never going to know the day we're meeting up, which is going to be a bit of a shame, really, isn't it?
Oh, I hope he is listening. So if you are listening, mate, we'll sort it out.
Come into a pub near you soon. Until then,
Selby. Bye.